So after a week break of No Cautious Hero, we return with episode 10, which I might even say was the most serious of the episodes thus far, but it didn't mean it didn't have its fair share of laughs, because it was definitely still very humorous while also presenting some much more serious angles that the story can obviously explore down the road, potentially in a season 2 should it ever get one. It's no surprise and no shocker that this series has had its production issues. I mean, we can look back at the opening or ending, whichever one it was. They couldn't finish it for a while there, we didn't see it for quite some time. This is the second break that they've taken, but that doesn't bother me. I mean, it really shouldn't for many. I mean, it's no surprise how hard crunch time is for animators, especially working in anime. So I'd much rather them have a week break of No Cautious Hero than rather than just saying, hey, here's an episode where nothing moves for a majority of the episode, right? And I've always been an avid supporter of, you can look at so many shots in Cautious Hero. These are two main frames. These aren't in-between frames. These are focal frames that are characters talking, and yeah. If this was in a more serious anime, this would be very jarring. But we're in Cautious Hero. We're in a series where Rista can look like this, so the natural transition from maybe production bumps to something that's actually intentional to make you laugh and look a little more off-model for body reaction reasons, the transition from either production missteps to actual supposed to try to make you laugh, it just feels very natural. So as a certain painter might say, it just becomes happy accidents, at least for someone like myself. It really has never taken me back like it has for some. Like, I've seen people on different social medias, I've even had people comment saying, you know, there's a lot of shots that I didn't like, it looked very bad, but when you look at how absurd this anime is, to me, it just is a natural transition. So even if the team is struggling at times, I never really blame them. I never really criticize them for it because this is a comedy series for the most part. Yes, we obviously have more serious angles, and anytime they are trying to go more serious, it doesn't really feel like there's too many production missteps. It more or less is a pretty clean character model, pretty clean looking shot, so it never really puts me off, or at least that's how I currently feel. There's been tons of speculation because it's the most obvious answer, that Seiya probably has been summoned before. You don't have a hero who's this powerful, who's this overly cautious, unless he either knows what he's doing or he's been here before without remembering it. And it very much is brought up and pretty much confirmed, I feel like, at this point in time, that most likely Seiya has been in a lot of battles before. And if he came from a world that apparently has no wars, there's only one logical outcome, that he has been summoned before. And I mean, you can look at that goddess that Rista has been talking to. When she first got introduced to Seiya, it didn't look like it was her first time meeting him, so I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she was the one who summoned him before, or something like that. It obviously is the most logical outcome. There could still be some twists and turns we don't see coming, but if you are going to have a series like this flourish, you can even look at Konosuba as an example. You can't just solely rely on ridiculous banter. You also do have to have a more serious narrative, or at least something more mature than just a bunch of characters goofing off and hitting one another. So I do like that they are clearly setting up for a lot more serious subject matter, while still keeping the emphasis on the more absurd comedy. That is a proper balance, especially for the endgame for the Cautious Hero. I really enjoyed this episode. I obviously was disappointed like many that I couldn't watch it last week, but walking in and then immediately walking out of this episode, I felt like the wait was worth it. Yes, was this the prettiest looking episode of Cautious Hero? Absolutely not, but it had its fair share of laughs, it had its fair share of serious moments, and there's actually some twists I did not see coming. I actually didn't see the whole father angle actually being a devoted follower to the Demon Lord, and that's actually why he turns into a baby. I thought it was like he unleashed his ultimate attack, and that's why he turned into an infant. But no, you know, he went to fight the Demon Lord, and now that seemingly happens. It's some curse, and then it turns out the whole curse is just like this devoted follower, and I'm just like, okay, that's actually pretty clever, I have to say. And even though some people I'm sure are going to say I saw that coming a mile away, I really wasn't focusing on that. I actually thought it was more of a, hey, yeah, it makes sense if he went to fight the Demon King, maybe got a curse put on him, but I thought it was more like he expanded so much power. I feel like that's actually something that Cautious Hero is really good at, is like, obviously giving you a lot of material that you're pretty confident in what it's going to present. Like you say, okay, I see this trope, I see what type of characters we have, this is exactly what's going to happen. But they do spice it up enough that they present either an idea, an ability, or just something that in the back corner of your mind, maybe you could predict it if you really were focusing in on it, but there's so much happening at any given moment of the Cautious Hero that you don't always see these twists coming, so when they do pop up, I find them to be very, very rewarding. There's so many moments that were just very humorous, even if you weren't like laughing out loud like a maniac like maybe past episodes, just seeing the idea of Seiya and the gang just walking through the town, looking at casinos, looking at just all the little things that most heroes, most isekai protagonists would be jumping at because that's pretty much what Rista wants. that cliche life where you get those bonding moments where the romantic tensions and undertones, they start rising up, because that's pretty much what always happens. And maybe that has happened to Seiya before, especially if he has been summoned before. But this is a character who is perfectly prepared. And I know there was so many people who were very worried about him because he didn't say that, or it just kind of felt like, oh man, is he gonna die? I mean, there was multiple points in this episode it actually felt like Seiya was getting hurt. Hell, he was getting wounded. He was actually sweating. It actually did feel like he was struggling. But even when he got his arm cut off, or even after seeing just so many times that it feels like the character's actually worried for his life, at this point, I still don't feel worried for his life. Could there be at some point? Absolutely. But it just feels like at this point, it feels like everything is still kind of according to plan, even if there was a fight that he wasn't perfectly prepared for. I mean, there was definitely something going on with Valkyrie, and it seems like we understand now what was going on with that bedside training. Definitely some cool abilities that we didn't see coming for sure. So to me, like, this episode represented a new angle that the series wants to explore. Does it still have ridiculous comedy? Absolutely. Look at the faces, look at some of the dialogue, and look at some of the just overall reactions to Seiya's antics. They're absolutely funny, while also having pretty funny moments with some of the side characters as well. I really did appreciate that whole angle where Rissa was trying to prove her worth as being a healer. It was pretty damn fantastic, I have to say. There was definitely a lot of stuff you expected, stuff you've seen before in The Cautious Hero, but it was also transitioning to someone that we haven't seen before. A more worried Seiya, someone who actually wanted to take a break after this fight. He realized that he actually was coming pretty close to dying. He actually realized that there was definitely things that he has to prepare better for, and he recognizes that maybe it is time for a little R&R. That isn't something we've seen before, and it's obviously indicating that there is different sides to Seiya, and I mean, at this point in time, if he hasn't been summoned before, I would actually be shocked. That would probably be the biggest shocker in this series, but it definitely feels like they're not trying to be subtle about it. They definitely want you to basically assume that he's probably been summoned before. This isn't his first rodeo. There's no reason to bring up the idea that apparently in his original world, there is no wars, but apparently this warrior is saying you are a seasoned warrior. There's only really one option in my mind, and I think that'd be the most interesting angle to definitely go down. It just feels as if this episode of Cautious Hero, it definitely wanted to make you laugh, but it felt like it wanted to make you understand the more serious side that this series can explore the most, and I actually think that was a really interesting angle. I mean, hell, they bring up something that made me laugh like a lunatic the first time they did it, the slapping. It was hilarious to see him just put someone who wanted to be cliche in her place. It was something you didn't see coming, and it was hilarious. But when he did it in this episode, it was serious. It wasn't something that felt like it was supposed to make you laugh. It actually was supposed to make you feel like, damn, he's actually saying the truth here. Even if this was your father being an evil bastard, he's still your father, and appreciate the time you have with him while you still have him. That was a very serious line. In fact, it might have been the most serious moment in the show to date, because you definitely did not see that coming, especially seen by how he's treated her thus far. That's what I really like about The Cautious Hero at this point. It's definitely this hilarious absurdity that I can't get enough of, and when it tries to be funny, I'm generally gonna laugh. But when it does have to go more serious, especially seen by this episode, I think they have the chops to do so. I think there's enough room to really do something that will actually stand tall as if it gets the long run, if it gets a season 2, I definitely can see a more serious objective while still incorporating more comedy. But if they wanted to focus more on the serious, they could, but they could also balance more on the comedy side. Either way, it would be interesting. As a whole, this season has been more funny than not, but I do appreciate spicing it up somewhat, shaking up the formula in a way that we haven't really seen a lot of. There's definitely been some serious moments, but a majority of the episodes has been absolute ridiculousness, and I think everyone can pretty much agree that we've loved it for that. But if you are entering in your final stretch of the anime and you're trying to prove that in the long run there is more than just Cautious Hero jokes, then absolutely do something more serious, and I appreciate that. I feel like it's actually a rewarding thing. Got people hooked because it's funny, the characters are great, and you're breaking down tropes. Hell, this anime tries its hardest to be a romance anime. Rista wants the main man. She tries her hardest to make it into that cliche isekai romance, but Seiya always shuts it down. It's hilarious for that. It's hilarious for all the things that it breaks down. But the idea that now it's showing you that not only are we breaking it down like that, we're now going to try to woo you by giving you something more mature and a lot more actual, something that you would expect from maybe an isekai plot, but you usually have it bogged down by something that's just a lot of riddled fan service, or a lot of riddled fan service even in the sense of just like cliches and tropes, not even just sexual fan service. So it feels like, if we could get that season 2, I don't know if we will, If we only get a season 1, I'm still going to look fondly at this show, but if we did get that season 2, my mind is racing on what they could possibly do with this story, and based on the lore that we have in this world, it's really interesting. Like, they actually go pretty well into the lore, how things work, the whole idea that basically if a hero's killed, he basically just goes back to his world. If a goddess is killed, she just goes back to her realm. But now that we got this whole chain breaker, just this whole demon blade of doom, that can actually sever them for good. Like, that's just, it not only leads into the whole idea that, yeah, if you get killed, you're just going to go back to your world, but if you have this insane stats, you're naturally going to get transported back in, and if he doesn't have his mind wiped, like, it's just, there's so many ways to make the idea of Seiya being summoned before a really interesting narrative, and I honestly would be disappointed somewhat if it wasn't that angle, because it just feels like not only are they heavily hinting at it, kind of slapping us in the face with that, but it also feels like it would be the most interesting narrative, especially for something if they want to go more serious, because if someone's failed how many times, it would make sense why he's so overly cautious, while also letting it be funny all in the process. Like, it just felt like something that we definitely recognized, but also was showing us a side of the cautious hero that we haven't seen before, but because we've been with this series for so long, now that it's starting opening up to us more and more, it just feels like we're seeing a side to the series that we didn't see coming, but we're glad to have actually had. At least that's how I'm feeling. This was a very entertaining episode of The Cautious Hero for even being as different as it was. It was definitely memorable and well worth the wait, or at least that's how I'm currently feeling. But as always, what is everyone feeling? Either for source material readers, anime originals like myself, what did you think? Theories and speculations? Let me know down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and remember to hit that subscribe button if you have been new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.